Let me get everything working, wait for the streaming software to get going and make sure we're live. Looks like we are. Welcome to this week's live Monday Music Motivation. Today I want to talk a little bit about where I'm at, what I'm working on, what I'm thinking about, some fun things that I did this last weekend, and give you guys some food for thought, some inspiration and motivation in your practice, and of course, fill out our template and get our plan in place for your practice this week to have a great week of practice. So, what I'm talking about here is the idea of sort of what our brain wants versus what our brain needs, which is kind of interesting and something that I sort of came to the idea of through a practice class that I attended this last Saturday. It was led by Greg Goodhart. Really interesting stuff, lots of brain science type stuff. And it was hosted by Modacity, which is how I heard about it. And it was a great time, really fun, interesting stuff that led to some of the ideas that I wanted to talk about today. So, what I think is interesting and what I want you guys to explore and experiment with in your practice this week is the idea of routine versus novelty. And in the description, I sort of labeled that as what our brains want versus what our brains need. In the practice class, it was a lot about desired difficulty, contextual interference, those kinds of things to make our brain sort of have to think harder about what we're doing so that we can get more growth. And the desired difficulty, especially the contextual interference, those things are novelty. And those are the things that make the difference. But on the other hand, our brain really likes routine. You can see it in all aspects of your life. Humans are such pattern-driven people, things, animals. We really like to sort of wake up at a certain time, get ready in the morning in a certain order. I think there was a study, I don't remember exactly, but it was like 80% of people, or some really high percentage of people, always start brushing their teeth in like the same spot in their mouth. And it's just something that we build habits, we build patterns, and we just run them on autopilot. That's pretty much what our brain is good at doing, is best at doing, is get a pattern, run it on autopilot. And it can be problematic. There's all kinds of interesting discussion we could go into about psychology and how we work as humans. But it's really interesting in music. We have the same thing. And that's actually maybe a big reason why I do what I do and I make videos in the first place, is to try to break people's patterns, sort of introduce some novelty into their routine to do things a little bit differently. Because we get in the practice room, we start playing, and we do the same read test every time. We do the same warm up, or even if we're doing different exercises in our warm ups, we're thinking about the same things and just treating them the same way every time. And then we start working on a piece and we do that the same way every time. Whatever the process is for you, maybe your process is better or worse. It doesn't matter what it is. We have that routine and our brain knows the pattern of how to do it and just follows through with it. A great way to demonstrate this is next time you put your clarinet together, put it together the opposite way. So instead of going mouthpiece to bell, is what I always do, go bell to mouthpiece, or if you normally go bell to mouthpiece, do mouthpiece to bell, and just see how like confusing that is for your brain. And that'll be an instant example of this contextual interference of doing it in a different order, creating that desired difficulty. And what that desired difficulty is the actual learning. That is what our brains need, is novelty. It's the novelty and having to think about doing something a little bit different in a new way that actually makes us grow. And after not too long, the novelty wears off and it falls into routine. It would probably take you 2 days of putting your clarinet together the other way than normal for that to start feeling normal. But the point of this is when we do something novel and change the way we're doing something, it makes our brain think about it more. Our brain has to process more and process in a different way. And you build up more learning and more growth. I very unscientifically call this encoding layers. There's, I don't think, any research about that. There's good research about contextual interference and desired difficulty. Encoding layers is sort of my own idea and term, which is this idea that when we do something novel and do even something that's routine, something that we've done many times, and we do it in a novel way, that extra thinking about it creates a different layer of encoding the information into our brain, which creates a stronger neural network for us to have access to and ability to do it. So in your practice this week, I encourage you to do something novel. Do something to break your routine. It can be even just as silly as putting the clarinet together differently, but it'd be even better if it was something on your actual practicing, of course. Maybe it can be something like doing your long tones for twice as long as normal and see what comes up, or doing exercise backwards is one of the ones that I learned in the practice class. That's really interesting and could be really fun to just add a little bit of novelty, because it's from novelty that we grow. And I've experienced this many times in my playing throughout the years, is when I go to a summer festival or start studying with a new teacher, they might be saying similar stuff, wanting to get similar results, but they're saying it in a little bit different way. They have sort of their own exercises of working on it that they are having me do. And by even doing something that's aiming for the same result in a novel and different way, I grow and grew every time. So try something this week. Try mixing it up. Leave a comment with what you're going to do new and different this week, how you're going to introduce novelty into your practice, and then put that into your routine. And that's what we're doing with our template. That's the routine that our brain loves and our brain wants. And that's a great thing for scheduling your practice. And maybe if you want to grow how you're scheduling your practice, then you introduce something novel. But it's actually a good thing that our brain is so good at routine and habits, because that can really help us. So if the way you're scheduling or practicing is working and you're liking it and you're sticking to it, then don't fix what's not broken, right? If it's not Baroque, don't fix it. Sorry, that's a terrible joke. But stick with those routines that are working. So if the template's working for you, then that's great. Just a refresher, if you need, you can go to the link in the description to get this template, or you can recreate it for yourself. It's the date for the week, reflection on how things are going, your goal for what you want to accomplish this week, and then your plan for when you're going to be practicing. And then you take that plan, you put it in your calendar, you set reminders, put it in your planner, whatever you do to make sure you actually stick with it. You'll notice my plan isn't filled out yet. That's maybe something that I'm doing that's going to be a little bit novel this week, is to try planning a little bit differently, thinking about it a little bit more, maybe getting a little bit more specific. In my goal, you saw I had try the practice class stuff, so I'm going to actually plan out what different kind of strategies and techniques I want to be doing. And I'm going to be practicing really hard this week leading up to Clarinet Fest next week. So that's what I want you to be doing. Try something new in your practice, fill out your template, get things scheduled, leave a comment with what you're going to do new and different to introduce some novelty into your playing. Have a great week of practice, and I will see you next week on the next live Monday Music Motivation. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great week of practice. See you next time.